Well, lawyers for U.S. President Donald Trump began his defense at the Senate impeachment trial. The head of the defense team argued that the Democrats' efforts to remove Trump from office in an election year would set a very dangerous precedent. Pat Cipollone said the American people will have the opportunity to remove Trump from office in the election. He says the team will make the case that Trump has a strong record against Russia and that the president has stood up for Ukraine against what he called Russian aggression. The Democratic-led House of Representatives impeached Trump last month on charges of abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. I'd like to welcome my guests to this news review. Keith Preston, chief editor at AttackTheSystem.com out of Richmond, and Jason Unruhe, political commentator out of Niagara Falls, Ontario. Thank you both for being with us. Starting it off, and Keith, what did you make, if you have seen the opening as far as the defense of the president today in these Senate hearings? What did you make of it so far?
Well, I make of it the same thing that I've made of this whole process, and that this entire impeachment process is a political farce that's being played out along purely partisan lines and has nothing to do with anything that's of any relevance to the best interest of Americans or to the best interest of the world as a whole. There are certainly many things about President Trump that could be criticized. If Congress was doing its job, they would be calling him out on a wide range of things that he's done. Unfortunately, these issues that they've chosen to make as the basis of the impeachment are dubious, fairly dubious issues. We could argue that there are comparable issues on the side of the Democrats, some of their leading political figures. What the Democrats are trying to do is simply make themselves appear tough on Trump to their political base. They know they've got an election coming up. They're really trying to hype the anti-Trump angle. And I'm thinking that they're probably hoping that this is going to derail Trump's re-election campaign or cast a shadow over it. On the other hand, now that doesn't mean that Donald Trump hasn't done anything that would merit censure. I agree with the position of Tulsi Gabbard, a congresswoman from Hawaii, presidential candidate, who took the position in the House vote on impeachment that she voted present, not because there's nothing to criticize about President Trump, but because the issues that were being raised in the impeachment are trivial, and that there are far more substantive issues on which the president can be criticized,
right,
such as his ongoing support for the war of genocide in Yemen that's being carried out by Saudi Arabia, and the kind of relationship that he has with Saudi Arabia, because of his efforts to facilitate ongoing Zionist expansionism into the West Bank and into the Palestinian territories, because of his abrogation of the nuclear treaty with Iran, because of his unprovoked missile attacks on Syria, because of his giving the green light to Erdogan's invasion of Syria. He's done quite a few things that certainly merit criticism, and Tulsi Gabbard's idea was to issue a resolution of censure against the president for these actions. Which
all right, let me get Jason in on this. Jason, your take on all of this, and stay with me, Keith. Let me get Jason in on this. Jason, your take. I mean, do you agree? First of all, do you agree with what Keith has said, or not?
For the most part, there are very real crimes that Donald Trump is guilty of. The larger crimes are ones that have been carried out with the complicity of the Democratic Party. The real attacks, the real crimes against humanity, the wars, etc., support for genocidal regimes such as Israel are very real issues that should be investigated. However, we do see that the Democrats are going along with them just as Donald Trump is. I think essentially this entire impeachment process is a power struggle within the U.S. ruling elite, who certainly do. Some of them back the Republican Party, some of them back the Democratic Party. Many of them are very unhappy with the way that Trump has proceeded, especially with his blatant disregard for the environment, blatant disregard for the international norms of trade, the kind of stability that is necessary for facilitating the global economy, which he has certainly been very destructive towards.
Jason, let me just stop you there with what you said, because you said a power struggle. So a power struggle, but it doesn't seem like there's a power struggle on some of the major issues. For example, like Keith had talked about, is there a power struggle, for example, with how the United States has dealt with Syria, how it's dealt with Iran, and so many issues, and of course the United States and its relationship with Israel, and exactly what that means. Is there really a power struggle between the Democrats and Republicans on that? Or basically, are they walking the same line? And it's a little bit different when we talk about this power struggle. How do you see it?
Well, I do see it as that they are generally united on the overall principle of putting pressure on Syria and Iran. However, they would disagree with certain measures. Certainly, very dangerous things like the assassination of Soleimani was something that was very ill-advised, something that a much more level-headed and intelligent leader would not have done. However, this does not change the fact that the United States is seeking a regime change inside of Iran. However, there are some actions that are extremely dangerous that threaten to blow up into a larger conflict, such as the decision to assassinate Soleimani, which has certainly given the U.S. empire a black eye over its inability to retaliate against Iran, sending the message that they are not going to be cowed by these attacks, and bombing the U.S. military bases inside of Iraq. So I think that they're walking the same line, but they're walking differently. They certainly disagree fundamentally on how these things should be carried out.
Thank you both for being with us for this news review. Keith Preston, Chief Editor at AttackTheSystem.com out of Richmond, and Jason Unruhe, political commentator out of Niagara Falls, Ontario. And thank you, viewers, for staying with us on another news review.